The most trusted and connected man in Utah.
Senator Kimpson out of Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you for having me.
Doug Wright.
We need to work together and put aside these petty differences and move forward as a state.
The Doug Wright Show on KSL News Radio 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome to our debate between the gubernatorial candidates for governor of the state of Utah. We are so pleased to be here. We're actually in Studio A of Channel 5 today. We appreciate our friends and colleagues at Channel 5 making this space available for us. And let's just back up that we do indeed have quite a crowd here. Let's hear a little round of applause for our candidates today. Before we go to our opening statements with Vaughn Cook and Mike Weinholz, and by the way, Mr. Weinholz did win the coin toss, so he will start first and end. He will have last word in the final comments in about an hour and a half from right now. But I wanted to acknowledge that this event is sponsored by the Utah Women's Democratic Club, the oldest continuous women's democratic club west of the Mississippi, and they have been wonderful helping us put this together. And our timekeepers, this has worked so well in the past, we've invited the League of Women Voters to give us a hand here. And everybody takes these ladies seriously, very seriously. And we're going to play the time card very, very closely here. So I'd ask you to pay attention to the time cards as they come up and keep your comments right on the dot or as close as we reasonably can. So let's begin our debate right now. And we will start again because Mike Weinholz won the coin toss. He will be able to have his opening comments first. Mr. Weinholz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Mike Weinholz, and I am running to be your next governor. However, I want you to know that in addition to running against whomever the Republican candidate is, I also intend to run against the one-party system that we have in our state that doesn't seem to be serving the needs of everyday Utahns. It seems to be serving the needs of special interest groups more than those of everyday Utahns, and I think that's wrong. That's the reason I'm running. I want to give Utahns a voice. My family and I moved here nearly 20 years ago for a business opportunity, and we fell in love with Utah and decided to make it our permanent home. That business opportunity was CHG Healthcare Services, a company widely recognized for being one of the best companies to work for in America. And the reason we get that recognition is we put people first, and that's what I intend to do as governor, put the people of Utah first. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, Vaughn Cook.
My name's Vaughn Cook. I'm a native son of Utah. I was born in Logan and raised in Cache Valley. Came up through the public school systems here and have lived in several counties. My wife and I, Kathy, have been married for 44 years. We have 5 children and 15 grandchildren. I make my living as a businessman. I'm the CEO of a company that I founded 12 years ago. Our offices are in Linden, and we employ 60 to 70 people there. For the last couple of years, we've been recognized as one of the best companies in the state to work for. I'm a lifelong Democrat, proud to be a Utah Democrat, and I'm running because, as Mike mentioned, we have a one-party dysfunctional government. I'm also trained as an Oriental medical doctor, and so I'm trained to look at things holistically. And when I look at our government from a holistic perspective, you can't have a supermajority and have a healthy system. The only solution to this is to elect more Democrats, and I'm hoping that this year I will be the governor for the state of Utah.
We'll begin with our questions now. By the way, many of the questions that I am going to ask will be on behalf of our KSL listeners, Channel 5 viewers, those who are interested in this campaign, and they submitted them to us. This first question now. For the past 2 legislative sessions, the uninsured in our state have anxiously awaited help. We've debated the Medicaid expansion, full Medicaid expansion. We've debated Healthy Utah. We've debated Utah Cares. And finally, we had the signing of HB 437. Are you satisfied with what the legislature has done to address the uninsured in the state of Utah? And we start with Mr. Cook on this one.
Well, the answer is no, I'm not satisfied. I think that the politics first strategy that we see so often implemented on Capitol Hill in this state is a travesty, frankly. We're leaving so many people uninsured, and we're leaving so much money out of the economy because our legislators are afraid that if they appear to be in favor of Obamacare to any degree, they're afraid they won't get renominated and thus reelected. It's time for us to realize that the economics of full expansion of Medicaid and the compassionate service that that provides to thousands of people in this state who go uninsured, it's time to implement that. It's time to stop the politics first strategy, and the way to do that is to elect more Democrats.
Mr. Weinholz.
I agree with Vaughn that this is a classic example of putting politics before people, which is something our current legislature does frequently. And the reason for that is our Republican friends cannot bring themselves to be viewed as supporting Obamacare. And if the results of the 2012 presidential election were different, and this were Mitt Romney's Medicaid expansion plan, they would have approved it in the first 30 seconds. And this is a classic example of how putting politics before people is toxic. The other thing that's wrong with this is that it's fiscally irresponsible. What we did in the last session was we covered the fewest amount of people for the most expensive cost. And we refused to bring back Utah taxpayer dollars in the amount of between $500 and $600 million by fully expanding Medicaid. Those are taxes that Utahns have already paid, and we deserve to have that money back into our economy.
In this debate, we are offering rebuttal time if you choose to use it.
One of the things that we don't realize occurs because of our lack of expansion of Medicaid is there is an initiative called the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, and that affects our criminal justice system. But it was built around the idea that we would have full expansion of Medicaid and we would have hundreds of millions of dollars here to treat the mentally ill and to treat people with addiction problems. Because we're not funding that program, it's having a negative impact on our justice system as well.
Mr. Weinholz, if you choose.
Yes, and the final thing I'd like to say is when the Affordable Care Act was first being debated several years ago, the Republicans floated this false narrative of death panels, which was patently false. However, what I believe our legislature did in the last session was a death panel, because they said, we are going to cover you 11,000 people, but you 90,000 people that are over here who have the same need and we can afford to cover you, you're going to have to continue to suffer. So that's just not right. It's morally bankrupt and it's fiscally irresponsible.
We had many people who wrote in various questions on education. We kind of melded them together. This will go to Mr. Weinholz first. To education, we know we have a lot to do. We have a big challenge in the state of Utah. Education funding is number one priority for most Utahns. How would you increase the funding and bring parents, teachers, school districts, and government together to make real changes for our kids?
Well, the key to your question is real change, because the governor and the legislature are patting themselves on the back for putting more money into education in this past session. But it doesn't move the needle. It still leaves us 50th in the nation, which is an embarrassment to most Utahns. You know, we can't call ourselves a family-friendly state if we're not going to invest in our children's future. And there are many ways to do this. One way is to make sure that the K through 12 education fund is not continually rated for other sources, which happens. Sometimes higher education takes money out of the K through 12 fund. Sometimes charter schools do. In certain years, even transportation does. So we need to make sure that the funds that we have set for K through 12 education stays there, and then we need to prioritize. Education needs to be our first priority. The Republicans say it's their first priority, but their actions don't reflect that.
Mr. Cook.
I don't know that more money is necessarily the solution to all of our problems. However, when it comes to education, when I look at the trends over the last 20 years, I see a pattern of systematic starvation. I feel like we put our kids in jail and now we're trying to feed them the least amount of food we can and see how little we can feed them before they actually die. I think that we should change the dialogue in Utah. Instead of excusing ourselves for being at the bottom, we should actually take some initiative and do the things that would actually put us at the top, so that people look to this state as the leader in education, not the bottom of the barrel. I don't know that that's necessarily money, but most of the people in this state are in favor of a tax increase if they know the money is going to go to education. And as Mike mentioned, too often the money goes into the coffer and then gets diverted into other programs. That needs to stop.
A rebuttal.
To me, it's all about priorities. Utah families have to prioritize when they are saving money, putting money aside for their children's college education, for example. And I think our legislature and the governor ought to prioritize as well. We can't keep saying that we're family friendly and children are most important to us, and yet not fund education, which is critical to, not only to their future success, but to economic success, economic development success as well, because we need an educated workforce to continue to drive economic development.
Mr. Cook, if you choose.
Well, one other problem that is really a concern with education is our teacher drain. I've talked to several teachers who have told me that they have not had a pay raise in 7 years. They told me of teachers who get trained in this state and then leave because they can't make a living wage, they can't support their families here, but other states pay better. We were in Duchesne County a couple of weeks ago, and I learned then that Duchesne School District last year had 50 openings. And a county that size is going to have a hard time filling 50 openings. We need to address the issue of this teacher drain. It's a serious problem.
Thank you to both of our candidates. We have many, many more questions. We appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions on our gubernatorial debate today. Our Democratic candidates for governor joining us here in our KSL studios. We'll take a brief break, and we'll be back with more of our debate.